fan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a fan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good. Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood.
Hey, dummy, you're on.
It figures. The one time I say, you know what, no, let's just do it, I can't hear a damn thing. I don't know what it is. I wish I knew specifically what it was that allows me to either hear that or not hear it, but...
Stop it. Just go. You're ruining the show. Mom!
Mark, you can't ruin this show. It's already too
Go
far down the toilet.
fuck yourself.
Anyway, hi, everyone. Mark comes back from vacation, and this is what he is welcome to. This is Damn You Hollywood. I'm Robert Winfrey. I'm your host for the show. Tonight, first of all, you know what? Before I get into what show we're reviewing, Mark is back. Again, he was on vacation for the last week. He got to recharge his batteries. He got to unplug. He got to be with his family. It was a happy, hunky-dory time for all, I assume. Mark, how are you doing? How was vacation? Any stories about your kids you want to get out of the way?
Yeah, they both caught some version of the rotavirus and proceeded to get us sick in quarantine for one day.
Nice.
I threw up lasagna.
There we go.
Damn.
Other than that, we had a great time.
Ironically enough, not the grossest thing you'll hear on the show tonight.
The highlight of my trip was... So we were quarantined in the one place we hadn't been to and we really wanted to get off the ship in, which was Belize. So we hadn't planned to get off the ship at the next stop, which was, I think, Costa Maya. But we got off the ship because, one, on that particular day, the boat was really rocking. Like, we were on one of the smaller Royal Caribbean boats, and the waves were particularly bad. And the boat, you know, you could really feel the boat move. And I've got pretty good sea legs. Like, I've gone on huge, like, fishing boats or whatever, small fishing boats, and I don't get seasick or anything like that. I go on roller coasters, no problem there. But between recovering from having been sick the day before and the general moving of the ship, we all said, we got to get off the ship or we're all going to lose it. So we got off, and we're just walking around. We had no agenda. We hadn't paid for an excursion. And we happened to have found a cantina. Not the Mos Eisley's cantina, but a cantina in Mexico that had a wrestling ring set up and luchadores that were taking pictures and, you know, and hanging out with fans, and then occasionally, you know, would do a quote-unquote show, which was they would do a 2-on-2 wrestling match, which was hilarious. The hilarious thing to me was we were sitting at a table, like right at ringside, and one of the luchadors comes and says, please to move the table, we're going to wrestle here. And I'm like, oh, hot dog. So yeah, we were up close and personal with a 2-on-2 luchador match, and my son got to kick a wrestler. Which the funny part about that was, the guy that was doing the announcements picked him up and was like, go ahead, kick him. And my son, like, froze. So basically, the guy used my son as a foreign object and hit the wrestler with him.
Nice.
Like kind of just threw him like a chair. And then the next day, my son's in the pool, and he starts to cry. And I'm like, Jonas, why are you crying? He's like, I missed my opportunity to really give him a good kick.
He knows that he blew the spot.
He fucking froze and fucked up, and he was feeling it the next day. But I mean, all in all, we had a good time, and yeah, I came back recharged and ready to go. I'm ready to give you the dirt, motherfucker. Let's go.
All right, the other voice you've heard on occasion chuckling maniacally in the corner is Jesse Starcher, who's with us for this show. Jesse, I wasn't aware you were going to be on here, but happy to have you. How you doing?
Hey, I'm perfectly fine. I'm glad I had the chance to squeeze this biopic. What are we going to call it? Biopic or biopic tonight? Which one is it?
I've always gone biopic.
Okay, all
Should we
right.
call it a biopicnic?
So I was able to squeeze this biopicnic in there about this time, about 3 o'clock this afternoon. Finally able to. It actually destroyed my PC last night. I started watching it right after we recorded source material, and then right as we got to, I think it was it Tommy or Nikki snorting heroin off of a girl's ass. Then
No. That doesn't happen only once.
I was going to say, was it Tommy or Nikki? The answer is yes.
Then my computer's power supply just went. I actually heard it and then smelled it, and I was like, "Oh shit!" So I luckily I made a trip to the computer store, and I am able to participate in here tonight, and was able to finish the movie earlier today. So I'm glad to be here.
How are you going to deny this man? He's the long-running co-host of the premier metal review podcast on the internet, Metal Hammer of Doom. Of course, he's going to be here to talk about this biopicnic.
That's right, buddy. That's right. And speaking of ants at your picnic, boy, we got a bit to tell you about here later.
Can I just say I'm so sick of that myth about Ozzy being perpetuated?
Dude, it's in the book. That's
I don't
in the
care
book.
if it's in the book. I do not care. There's no way that actually happened.
He snorted ants.
That was something that, I had heard a long time ago from a friend of mine, and I was like, if they're going to put anything in this movie, that's what I want to see. I did not understand that we were going to see there was more to that, and I thought it was just ants that he snorted. Then things got real crazy, but, I won't give anything away.
I was going to say, if you ever read the book, apparently the snorting ants thing was just the beginning, and the way that it's presented in the movie where he seems to be a little bit more with it, a little bit more sober, and he kind of does it for shock value. I'm pretty sure in the book what actually happened was he asked for a bump. They told him they didn't have any cocaine, and he went, I'll fucking snort ants then, and, literally did it because he was, jonesing and withdrawing.
Oh, okay. You know what? How? Winfrey, tell me the logic. What do you think would happen?
You're going to ask the fucking teetotaler about, why somebody might snort ants?
You want to know the physiological consequences of inhaling small insects through your nasal passages?
That's what I want to know.
Nothing good.
Oh, man.
How do you know that? Have you ever snorted ants before? You don't know shit. That's what you know.
I don't need to snort ants to know that inhaling living creatures like that through a pathway that is designed to either get stuff faster into your brain through the blood-brain barrier, or you just breathe them in through your nasal passage, down through your trachea, and into your lungs. And a bunch of ants in either situation is a bad thing.
Listen,
that's the truth.
It's fucking Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, he's the Lord of Darkness. He's the man that bit the head off a bat. Clearly snorting ants.
It wasn't a bat.
No, at one point he bit the head off a bat.
It wasn't a bat. It was like a dove that was painted black or something.
Either way. It's Ozzy, so whatever.
Last person I expected to school us on metal mythology, Mark Radlich.
Robert Winfrey knows his metal. He just doesn't feel the need to come on the Metal Hammer of Doom and listen to our nonsense.
Well, I understand that, sir.
Anyway, if you haven't picked up on it, tonight we are reviewing The Dirt.
Oh, it's the dirt! Oh, the dirt! Give us the dirt! Sorry, go ahead.
You got that out of your system now?
No, he doesn't.
No, not by a long shot.
Go do it again then.
Oh, give us the dirt! Give us the dirt!
Oh, man.
Wake my kids up. All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm done now.
Yeah, I'm sure your wife will be thrilled to bits with that.
I'll go on the soundtrack tomorrow on the Metal Hammer of Doom. I mean, it just gets worse from here. I don't know how it gets any better.
Hey, come on, man. If you can't jam out to Vince Neil's cover of Like a Virgin, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Ooh.
Oh, somebody said
I haven't made it that far yet.
Somebody described their cover of I didn't think it was that bad, but somebody described their cover of Like a Virgin as a hate crime.
A hate crime?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
That phraseology has lost all meaning at this point.
I believe they
Overused.
were trying to be, purposefully hyperbolic, but go on. Do your introduction. Let's go. Or I'm going to start singing again.
All right, anyway. The Dirt is a musical dramedy biopic of the band Mötley Crüe based on the biographical book
It's an autobiography that was written by
semi-autobiographical.
everybody in the band and select other people. I don't know why you're having a difficulty wrestling with this.
Because if more than one person does it, I'm not sure the degree to which it's fully autobiographical. If there's a bunch of people doing it, I don't know. I'm not sure about the specifics.
I don't think it works that way. I think an autobiography
I don't know,
is
you
a
might
biography
be
written
right.
by the self. If the self is a group, and the group writes the book, it's an autobiography by definition. That's just logic.
All right, I'll go along with that then. It's based on the book of the same name that is a autobiography of the band Mötley Crüe and their various adventures with depravity, murder, so on and so forth.
Satanism.
Yeah, a little bit of that. The movie itself opens with I'm not going to go into the full details here because it's so
The
weird.
credits. I mean, my gosh. It just right off the bat, the credits, I was like, 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Okay, I need to turn this off because I cannot watch this movie.
Your children cannot walk in on that movie.
No, they cannot.
the Dirt
they
star.
can't.
The
we
Dirt
open
starring
with the perspective
Vince.
of Nikki Sixx about his abusive childhood and his self-destructive behavior, his lack of relationship with his father, his obsessions with music, his desire to form a band, the basic tropes of this type of person. And I say tropes not in some kind of demeaning way to the writing, because this is actually what happened to him, but this is a shockingly common situation. Runs into Nikki at a diner, and they kind of strike up the beginnings of the band between the two of them. We then meet Mick Mars, the lead guitarist, who is suffering from, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the disease.
Ooh, I could tell you here. Hold on. It was ankylosing something spondylitis.
Believe he
my
was
gosh.
turning into a tree is what was happening.
He is Groot.
Ankylosing spondylitis.
God bless you.
Ankylosing spondylitis is a type of arthritis in which there is long-term inflammation of the joints of the spine.
Mick Mars is Groot.
It's an unpleasant thing.
Yes.
They meet him, but he is clearly the guitarist they're looking for, so now all they need is lead vocals, and Tommy remembers, based on the loose description of what they want someone who looks good, who can dance, who has a little bit of the David Bowie influence, because this is the very early 80s. And Tommy Lee's response is, oh, this guy I went to high school with. And they takes them to a party where they meet Vince Neil. Takes a bit of convincing, but he decides to come along. They decide to name themselves. They go with Mötley Crüe. We track a bit of their rise to prominence on the local music scene in California. They're being signed to a record deal. Their tours, their various debaucheries along the way.
So many debaucheries.
Tommy Lee marrying Heather. I believe he did marry Heather Locklear at one point.
Yes. Tommy Lee married a lot of people, but Heather Locklear was one of them.
Yes, he did. Vince Neil marries a stripper / mud wrestler, has a daughter. It covers briefly the fatal car accident that Vince Neil was involved in that killed his passenger.
It was like the bassist or somebody from Hanoi Rocks.
Drummer
from Hanoi Rocks.
Covers them briefly breaking up, them that goes on. Nikki talks about a little bit about his addiction with heroin. Mick Mars is now having to have joints replaced pretty consistently. Tommy Lee just doesn't know what he's doing. Vince Neil... The point being, they all get so consistently destroyed by various chemical supplements and substances, they all just decide, you know what, we got to get clean. Like, we're going to be dead.
Unfortunately, they brushed over, and I'm really upset about this, they brushed over the portion of their career where they tried to be quote-unquote alternative, and they replaced Vince Neil with John Corabi, because there's a great part of the book where John Corabi writes an entire chapter about his experience as the new singer, where they instructed him to sing like both Pete Steele from Typo Negative and Phil Anselmo from Pantera, and he wrote in the book, in all capital letters, "Make up your fucking minds, it doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, that really doesn't. You could not get, like, that's, whoa.
There were two things in the movie. I'm going to let you finish, but there were two things in the movie that I wish that they left out. They left out a lot, by the way. Apparently Vince Neil had a successful solo career. He didn't just sit in a bar waiting for the band to come back together. But there were two things in the movie that were utterly skipped over. One was the John Corabi stuff, which I wish they had addressed, but that, you know, how long? You know, it's a 2-hour movie. How much time have you got to deal with John Corabi? But his part of the book and that chapter is one of those things that stood out to me. So I was kind of hoping they would deal with it. But the other thing was really, like, around the time of Shout at the Devil, Nikki Sixx and his girlfriend were living together, and they were mildly experimenting with actual, like, Satanism and conducting rituals in their apartment. And whether it was the drugs or their ability to connect with the nether realm, they had an experience which convinced them Satan was real, and they were like, fuck this, and stopped doing it. So I wish that had been in the movie, but unfortunately they skip over all the Satanism stuff and just focus on his heroin habit.
Yeah, it talks a little bit about the album Dr. Feelgood and the subsequent tour that they went on that just, like, never ended. Like, that thing just went on and on and on and on and on.
That rivaled the Black tour, the Black album tour for Metallica, didn't it? The tour that never ended.
I don't know. I'd have to look up the specifics.
It was up there.
But at the end of that, Vince Neil's both Tommy and Vince wind up having their marriages dissolve. I believe this might have been Vince's first. I mean, again, Tommy just got married like every other weekend. It takes a pretty hefty toll on them. Vince Neil leaves. They replace him with John Corabi, which has been touched on briefly. Vince has to deal with his daughter having stomach cancer that she eventually dies from. The band breaks up for a bit. Nikki Sixx is able to negotiate getting the rights to their music back from the record company, and the record company subsequently decides, no, we're not going to do business with you anymore, but here you go, have the rights to your music, which of course turns out to be the actually most valuable part of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nicky visits his father's grave, meets a half-brother, is able to get everyone to sit down at a table together where they all discover that, you know, the real treasure behind the entire journey wasn't the actual treasure. It was the friends they made along the way. They get back together. They play for another 20-some-odd years. The final show that they've played as of this recording was New Year's Eve of 2015. And the closing credits is probably I believe is like the most amusing part of the entire movie. When they kind of intercut between the actors and the actual band members, and you get some actual footage of the band across. Again, that's actually was probably what amused me the most personally. So that's where we sit on this. I don't have a whole lot here. Again, this is a plot synopsis of this movie actually doesn't really do anything for the movie itself. You do have to this is a thing that is designed to be viewed, because there's so much crap that just gets on screen that I could describe, they have the famous scene with Ozzy snorting a line of ants and then licking his own urine off of a pool surface. Tommy Lee running through the halls of a hotel in a thong. A lot of cocaine, a lot of alcohol, a lot of other drugs. Nikki Sixx looking at himself in the mirror with a needle still stuck in his arm and blood leaking down his forearm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, come on. Who hasn't woken up that way, though?
Me!
I'm willing to bet at least 80% of the population in the United States.
Well, then none of you have ever really lived.
Mark, you've never woken up that way either.
No, I've never shot dope.
Your biggest regret as far as waking up involves your ex-wife.
Wow. True statement.
I mean, I said it because I thought it was true. I didn't expect you to confirm it. Sorry, I skipped over this, but they do touch on this in the movie at one point. Nikki Sixx does overdose on heroin and has to be revived in a van, or in an ambulance rather.
Yeah, but really, who hasn't died at least once in their life?
Everyone will die at least once in their life. That's true. Here's your big spoiler alert for life, everybody. It ends.
It does.
Phil Anselmo's died like a dozen times, and he continues to go on to make music by banging on pots and pans.
Ugh. I wish one of those would stick. So again, the point being, you really do have to kind of see all of the individual, like, again, this is all about the individual debauchery, the stories that they tell. There's not a lot of plot. There's not a lot of narrative structure. It's just a collection of experiences.
All right, let me butt in here and say that, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in terms of general biopics, but biopics kind of live and die by the style in which they're shot. When they're shot kind of flat, and here's just an example of one right off the top of my head. I don't know if you guys ever saw this. The VH1 made-for-TV movie about Def Leppard was.
I may have seen it once, but isn't that also? No, sorry, I'm thinking of that crappy like behind the music one they just replayed for 20 years.
No, this was a made-for-TV movie.
Yeah,
and it was very flat. It was kind of like, a lot of like made-for-TV things, they don't have any kind of style to them. They're just sort of a presentation of events that are dramatized for television, and then that's it. And it's like you said, you're either interested in the story, you're interested in the person or the people, or you're not. There's nothing that draws you into the movie from a style or an aesthetic point of view, and that really does make all the difference in a biopic. So, for example, I don't want to get. I'm going to say there's a tendency on this show for me to say something and then Rob his head to fucking explode, and then we go off on trying to pick up the pieces of his head. Could we not do that when I happen to mention The Doors by Oliver Stone, I believe it was, which was extremely stylized, as is most Oliver Stone movies. And so, like, that's where the pendulum swings. It's like the made-for-TV Def Leppard movie or the fucking Doors, and whatever's in between. What makes The Dirt, I think, interesting, to me at least, it's kind of like I, Tonya. They break the style of the movie is that confessional, breaking the fourth wall thing, and that either works for you or it doesn't. I think I read The Dirt back when it was first published. Like, I got the hardcover like the day it was released. Big Mötley Crüe fan over here, and I loved the idea that it was just like, I remember in the liner notes of the book, they said this book is written kind of like a crime scene report, where you have different witnesses to the same events and they don't always match. And I thought that was a really fun way to give a narrative of their career at that point, which you had these four guys plus Doc McGee plus other people, John Corabi, the various wives. They all contributed to the book. They all wrote chapters, and I think the movie does a halfway decent job of representing that style, where they break the fourth wall and they talk directly to the audience. And I think the pinnacle of that moment is Mick Mars turning to the camera and going, "This didn't really happen."
Yeah,
it's like one of my favorite parts of the movie. Other than that, as Robert said, your mileage may vary. If you're interested in the dirty lives of Mötley Crüe, it was a fun 2 hours to spend watching the movie. I mean, how do you not like watching a bunch of guys destroy hotel rooms and fuck bitches? On the other hand,
the same thing for 2 hours.
They broke it up a little with a little heroin here and a drink in there, and making some.
Didn't. It was all the same,
and making some music in between. Obviously,
if by making music you mean lip syncing, then sure.
I mean, showing them making the music. That's what I was trying to say. But if you're not really interested, then the movie's not going to work for you. You're going to be bored by it. Let me pitch it over to Jesse. Jesse, what did you think of The Doit? The Doit!
The Doit. Well, this coming from a guy who has, a very surface knowledge of who Mötley Crüe is. I know most of the good songs that have been played over and over on your local hard rock radio station. But I was never really into figuring out what went on behind the scenes with this band. I knew there were some crazy stories, but in all, I wasn't too interested in who these people were. I know I've mentioned it on the other show, and I know I'll mention it tomorrow. My brother-in-law is a huge Mötley Crüe fan, and really a lot of what I remember learning about this band was through him and the stories that he told. Here we have the opportunity to dive into a biopic that shines a light on their lives. So I'm down. I like documentaries. I like biopics. I like learning about specifically, I don't know, there's not really too many that I can think of that I've seen in the past that focus on bands. You mentioned this Def Leppard show. I've never seen that. I don't think I've watched the Doors one at all. Recently, we just had the big Freddie Mercury and the Queen biopic. What was that called? Bohemian Rhapsody?
Correct.
Yep.
Haven't seen that yet. I've heard a lot of good things. Okay.
Yeah.
Hang on. No. Let me be very clear.
Okay.
If you watch it, the only interesting thing is the acting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is one of the most badly edited movies I've ever seen in my life.
Here's the problem with Bohemian Rhapsody. That movie was all about people's love of that band and their music. I mean, there's nothing to this movie. The entire third act is the I almost said Rite Aid. Live Aid.
Right out there in the parking lot.
Their concert at Walgreens. The whole literally the whole third act is the band gets together and plays Live Aid. That's it.
All right. Well, regardless, I jumped at the chance to watch The Dirt and learn more about Mötley Crüe. And wow, here's the thing: not knowing enough about the actual history, I can't go into this criticizing it and saying, okay, that wasn't right. That definitely wasn't, didn't happen at the time that they say they did.
Apparently, the only major issue of chronological accuracy that people who are more familiar with this than I am have had is Tommy Lee wearing a red and yellow Hulkamania t-shirt in 1981, which is a few years before it was actually released.
Yeah, a bit before. But yeah, the look at each one of these characters, let me just go ahead and say, I think my favorite character or favorite band member, I guess you would say, out of this, if he's a real true representation of what he is in reality, I loved Mick Mars.
Yeah.
I think I liked him probably the most out of all the guys, just because look, they're rock stars, they're living it up. It's the '80s, but Mick Mars walks into this and he's like, "You guys don't know shit, and you act like a bunch of fools." And it was so fun to watch his reactions sometimes as to what was going on around him, which it had to have been one hell of a ride, but. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. A lot of things that I remember hearing about. We talked about the whole Ozzy thing, the overdosing. So they touched on the big things. And this was only 108 minutes. I didn't realize it was that. That seems awful short to me. But regardless, they could only fit that in there and under that whole history of that band under 2 hours. So I'm sure they had to glaze over a lot and pick out some of the stuff that was important and some of the stuff that wasn't. So, I had a good time, man. It was The Doit.
The Doit. I thought the guys, the main actors who played Mick Mars, Tommy Lee, Nikki Sixx, and Vince Neil, I thought they did a pretty good job. Like I said, I really liked Iwan Rheon of Game of Thrones fame. Who plays Mick Mars? I thought he did a really good job. The other, I think Daniel Webber, who plays Vince Neil, was actually in The Punisher. I don't know if you know that, Jesse.
Yeah, he was also in. He was Lee Harvey Oswald in the the Stephen King thing on Hulu, 11/22. What is it? 11/22/63. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway,
11/23/60. It's the date of the Kennedy assassination.
Exactly.
I can't remember if it's 63 or 69.
And I couldn't place him for probably about 20 minutes. I'm like, where have I seen this fucking dude before? And then I remember him in The Punisher, and then of course going back to that. So, and I thought he did a good job. I thought he did fine.
Yeah, I thought all the main players did a good job. I said the best parts of this for me were when they acknowledged the camera, because again it goes back to the book. I talked a little bit about. I was a little upset that, I mean, the Satanism stuff really drove a lot of the early Mötley Crüe songs. So to skip and then to have that experience, and it was a big part of the book, and they just skipped right over it. They don't even acknowledge it. Like, that kind of bothered me.
Well, so these guys were like heavy into Satanism, or was it
Nikki Sixx was
just Nikki? Okay.
Nikki Sixx was.
All right.
Like they discussed a little bit about them all living in like the same apartment together, and being like dirt poor or whatever. It's addressed a little bit in the movie, but not much, and it's it's a big part of the book as well. So it's like, at an hour and 8 minutes, at 108 minutes, I really felt like this could have used another 20 minutes of content. I think a full 2 hours to get some of this stuff in there would have been would have benefited. Yeah, it wouldn't have hurt anything. Would have benefited the movie. I feel like they were just kind of rushing to the end. That's really my major criticism of it. Is the dirt is so rich with so much fun stuff that they left way too much out. I was reading an article from from one of the metal websites, and they were like they actually truncated a few characters. They acknowledged one of them in the movie.
No, he actually did it with so-and-so, but there's only so much time in the movie, we cut him out.
Yeah. But apparently, like, a couple of, like, Vince Neil's wives, they truncated into one character. Tommy Lee married a lot more women. So, the last thing I'm going to mention... I really
felt for him. He just felt like he was... Okay, he was portrayed as this lovable jackass throughout most of it, but then... he has no idea what he's getting into when it comes to, like, marrying chicks over and over and over.
Sure.
You're like, dude, come on. But, anyway, go ahead.
I have to say, the director talked about, the director being Jeff Tremaine, talked about how he broke his heart to film the Skylar is dying scenes.
Oh, gosh.
And watching that myself, like the movie is so much fun, but those sequences of Vince Neil watching his daughter die of cancer, it broke my heart. Like, I was inconsolable there for a little bit and kind of had to, like, pause the movie to get a hold of myself. But yeah, that was probably like the strongest that I reacted to any one thing that I saw. The stuff of like Nikki Sixx fucking nearly dying of heroin. I'm like, who hasn't?
Deal with that every day.
Again, 80-some-odd% of the population.
So I've been talking a lot here. We got to hear from Jesse. Go ahead, Winfrey. I mean, I know this wasn't your cup of tea, but go ahead and give your synopsis, your thoughts here, and what you thought of it, and then I think we're going to move on to the next part of the podcast.
I mean, you actually messaged me and said, "So how much did you hate the dirt?" And I told you then, I'm going to say it now, I don't think it's worth the effort it takes to hate. I mean, this exists. If you're a massive fan of Mötley Crüe, you will enjoy it. If not, you won't. I don't think it... I mean, I agree with you about, the stylized elements and about how necessary those are for any kind of, especially a musical or a musician, biopic. The other thing that those tend to hinge on is the acting. And I wasn't blown away by the acting in this movie at all. I wasn't especially enthralled by any part of it.
I mean, I would say it's adequate, or do you think it's less than adequate?
I don't think it's bad. I think it's just meh.
Okay, well, it would be adequate.
I mean, apart from my general distaste for Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah, but he did a good job.
Ask what your thoughts were.
He did a good job of sort of the devilishly impish, childlike Tommy Lee. say what, look. If Machine Gun Kelly shows up at WrestleMania and does a song, I'm gonna take out my dick and piss in his general direction. I get that, but but as far as he was asked to play a version of Tommy Lee, and I thought he did an adequate job of playing that. I don't think there was anything wrong with his performance.
No, again, it's just like, oh, you. Well, I will say this, like that. There's a couple of shots of him shirtless, and it's so painfully obvious which of his tattoos are his tattoos and which are like drawn on with a Sharpie. Because Tommy Lee has this tattoo, and we have to put it on you. Oh. Yeah, I liked Mick as Mick Mars. This is, the way he's portrayed in this. I like that he kind of shows up, and and his character is, I know I don't have a whole lot of time. I've wanted to be a rock star, and I can play. I'm not here to screw around. If you guys are just if this is just if this is just a circle jerk, I'm out.
Yeah.
If you're actually going to do something with this, I'm in.
Yeah, I think they went out of their way to show, I think Mötley Crüe gets kind of swept into that pile of, like, quote-unquote hair bands, with, like, Poison and Skid Row, again, the pendulum swings from, like Bon Jovi to Styx, to Stryper, Quiet Riot, and it's just like, all of these bands, to one degree or another, some are more talented than others, some of them are extremely talented. But they, it's like for every Poison who we've made fun of on Metal Hammer of Doom. I mean, like they write fun songs, but they're not exactly breaking new ground musically. There is a Mötley Crüe who are extremely talented and actually know how to play their instruments. I mean, say what you will about the content of their music, goils, chicks.
Look, for the record,
they're not bad.
No, I enjoy Mötley Crüe. That's one of the few concerts I've been to, actually, a few years ago now. They came through here, and I was able to go to one of their shows, and it was a lot of fun.
Did you take your top off and throw it at Nikki Sixx?
Shake your chest.
Did you ask Vince Neil to sign your tits?
No. I wasn't that close to the stage.
Oh, okay.
There was actually a really cool thing they did. Tommy Lee, his big in between set piece, like, okay, everyone else needs kind of a break. I don't mind still being crazy. He had two elevated drum platforms at not just like elevated, but like 20 feet off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
At the top of each corner of the stage, and he had a harness, and he would just jump between them and play, and then one of them blew up. So they put on a darn good show. So I enjoy their music. I agree with you about this is not a band that just kind of exists to.
This is not Great
go
White.
Along with the flow.
This is not Great White.
Yeah. They are talented. They put forth a lot of effort into their music, and it shows. And I enjoy their music. I just don't care about their lives.
Incidentally, I got to listen to like the very first Mötley Crüe album I actually came upon myself and went out of my way to buy was Dr. Feelgood, which is an intense and a very well produced album. But boy, oh boy, you can tell how much production went into Dr. Feelgood when you hear the demos, which are radically different.
Oh, really?
It's like, wow, they're almost too like different. Like the Dr. Feelgood demo is almost a completely different song than the finished version. That's how produced it is.
Mm.
So, again, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on this. I don't think it's bad enough to really go out of my way hating. I don't think it's good enough to really be praised in any particular way. So it exists. That's about the sum total of what I can say about it.
Last thing I'm going to ask you guys. I almost hate to ask this question because this is the Rattle Engine Broadcasting Network, home of some rather blue humor. But let's just throw it out there for the sake of conversation. Somebody mentioned that this movie in 2019, in the midst of the Me Too era, is 110% tone deaf.
Oh,
boy.
shut up.
Come on. Notice that this movie doesn't take place in the Me Too era. Number one.
Let's start with that, okay? Let's just start with the fact that this movie ostensibly endeavors to represent events as they transpire, as they actually happened. Okay? If that's the premise of your movie, nothing that is going to be portrayed that took place in any previous era is going to conform to societal norms
Well, hang on.
the present era.
Let me
Deal with it.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, okay? Let me play the role of the liberal tree-hugging hippie here.
You mean the same role you play in everyday life?
Go fuck yourself. As a director, Jeff Tremaine could have gone out of his way to take the debauchery of the band and of the time and paint it with a brush of, and it was bad. Like
that would require a director with a bit more subtle touch. And I'm not. And let me be clear. I don't necessarily mean that as a shot at this guy specifically. That's a very again. That's kind of a subtle thing that you have to deal with. More importantly, and this I think goes to the core of the issue. If that's the complaint, none of this was forced. Like, there's no coercion. Women threw themselves at this band.
Mm-hmm.
If your argument is, well, they're bad women, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's no, there's no abuse, there's no manipulation, there's no
abuse, dude. Fucking Tommy Lee punches a girl dead in the face for calling his mom a cunt,
and he immediately regrets it.
Yeah, A, he regrets it. B, look, man, I'm not generally speaking down with attacking people who don't attack me. Like, I don't care if you're a man or a woman. If you throw a punch at me, I'm going to hit you back. Like, I don't know why there's controversy around that. Let me be clear. Were I in Tommy Lee's shoes at that particular moment, I probably wouldn't have punched her. I wouldn't have waited for the bus to stop to throw her out, though. like we're going to pull to the shoulder. You get down to about 5 miles an hour, and that's when you're asking lost.
Tuck and roll, cunty cunt. Hey, Jesse, Captain Marvel, go on and smile, you cunt.
I mean, and look, more importantly, as it pertains to that scenario in particular, I don't know. Like, they were fighting. I think that's, I don't know. I consider that different from sustained abuse, but that may be me splitting unnecessarily semantic.
Yeah, hairs. I would tell you you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that court case, buddy.
Okay, but I'm not talking about the legal definition.
Mm-hmm. I think. Let me go over to Jesse here. You've made your point very, very clear, crystal clear. Let me go over to Jesse for kind of the last word on this. I think what some people are pointing out is there's not enough acknowledgement that the behavior. This movie seems to celebrate the debauchery and the treatment of women. And there are people saying, like, that's tone deaf in 2019. That the tale of this movie should have been that, you know, the treatment of the women in this movie was a bad thing, and that there should have been more of kind of a focus on that. Instead, it's just they don't really. Here's the thing. There was one complaint that seems to be celebrating the mistreatment of women. Then there was another complaint of they just sort of flat show it. It's just there. It happened. And there's no moral take on it, which was a missed opportunity.
Well, okay. Let's talk about this director first off. All right? Because I don't think he's going to really give...
Yeah. Hang on. I'll read you some of the finer points of his resume.
You're beating me to it. Please, go for it.
He was the director of Jackass from 2000 to 2002.
Oh, yeah, that's subtle.
Can we just stop there? That's literally all that needs to be said.
He was the director of Wild Boys with a Z. Mm-hmm. He directed 3 episodes of Nitro Circus. He was the executive producer for Steve-O, Demise and Rise. He's the co-executive creator and executive producer of The Dude Sons in America.
So you can
this. Here's the point. All this guy knows how to do is celebrate stupidity.
Films. Wait. films: Jackass the movie, Jackass #2, Jackass 3D, and Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa. Ladies and gentlemen, your director for the Mötley Crüe film, okay?
Please handle the treatment of women with more sensitivity.
Not happening. It's just not happening.
We're gonna need you to add some aesthetic and some delicacy. Okay.
It's fucking Mötley
Okay, I got
Crüe.
it. I know what we're gonna do. Okay, you want more aesthetic and more delicacy. Okay, more boobs, more sex with boobs.
Listen, don't just fuck
Or
him in front of the
drugs
camera.
with
Make
sex
sure
with
you're
boobs.
fucking him from behind. Make it tasteful.
Yeah, vary it up a little bit. Come on. Look, you can't get. You cannot.
Maybe cut the scene where Tommy Lee vomits on a stripper.
Yeah.
But here's my thing about that. Like, even that is just. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I am the biggest jackass in the world. That was hilarious.
Oh, of course. It was great.
I mean, I genuinely feel bad for anyone who's been vomited on, and I think that probably pertains to nurses and strippers more than anyone else in the world.
Well, don't you got to include parents in there. I've been vomited
No.
on quite a number of
as,
times.
As a profession.
Oh,
I was
okay.
gonna say. We're kinda
Yeah,
roped
sure.
for that
If you
one.
have kids, or if you're the, in my case, older brother of. I mean, look, I've got two brothers. One of them is like 13 years younger than me. The other's 14 years younger than me. I got puked on.
Sure.
That happened. Like, okay, if that's your thing, sure. But I think if we're going to talk like disproportionate as far as a profession who gets puked on, some combination of like nurses and strippers.
Sure.
Agreed. So yeah, it's if you were to tone this movie down, if you went into it with that in mind, let me tell you what would happen. You would have made the wrong audience appreciative of this film, because the audience you are looking for, as Winfrey stated, it's Mötley Crüe fans, and I'll tell you right now, they would shit all over this movie if it was not showing some of the debauchery that was going on.
Well, I'm not saying not to show it. I don't think anyone's arguing that. They're saying that you should get from the film that this behavior was costly to the moral soul.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because
Shout at
people
the
watch
devil.
a biopic about Mötley Crüe to have the character of their soul examined.
What were you saying about Shout at the Devil there, Jesse?
Hey, look, this is what it is. This is what it was. Okay, and there's Mötley Crüe fans. Like I said, I talked to my brother-in-law Saturday. I said, "Did you watch the film?" I haven't watched it yet, and
He said, "Not enough tits."
He's like, "Don't have the kids in the room." I was like, "Yeah, I understand that," but he specifically said there was a bunch of stuff that was glossed over, and a lot of the stuff that he talked about certainly wasn't moral. Good moral standing stuff. It wasn't like, oh yeah, remember that time Tommy Lee apologized to the three women? No, that wasn't what was missing. Okay,
At no point did they go over the conversion to Christianity.
They should have spent 20 minutes on that. No, it just didn't happen. So yeah, I'm sorry if it feels tone deaf. This isn't the movie for you. Believe it or not, you can go ahead and not watch the film.
Okay.
Boy,
yeah,
that would
sure.
have been a nice option for me.
All right.
Too late.
Anything else before we move on?
I'm good.
All right. Here we go. Here comes the money, sort of.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money,
Dollar.
Because this movie was not a theatrical feature, we're going to do a little something different with the money section of this podcast tonight. We're going to talk about a little bit of the production history and then just sort of the nature of musical biopics. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the podcast, but it was something that Robert and I discussed offline. Just wanted to bring it up with relationship to The Night. But this was, again, based on the book The Dirt by Neil Strauss, Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band. And as I said before, every chapter is written in first-person narrative. Every chapter is written by an individual that was either in the band or associated to the band. So, and a lot of stuff gets talked about repeatedly from different perspectives. So, like, Mick Mars writes a chapter, Vince Neil writes a chapter, and they might all be talking about the same stuff. So it's a huge book. It goes over a lot of detail. It's one of my favorites. Like I said, people who've been listening to me for a while know my memory a little sketchy, but I remember a lot about this book. It had a way with me. So the MTV and Paramount Pictures purchased the rights to the book back in 2006. The book, I believe, came out like 2001, I believe. However, it languished in development hell for like 10 years, over 10 years, until Netflix purchased the rights in 2017 and then rushed this to get made. I think that's another reason why, like, you have a guy like Jeff Tremaine doing it. It's like they just wanted to get the thing out there. And they knew they were making it for Netflix. So, if you compare, like, the craft of, say, like, Bohemian Rhapsody to The Dirt, I mean, there's a difference. I mean, The Dirt does come across like it's a made-for-TV movie.
The Dirt is better edited. I'm going to stand by that.
Fair enough. But, with that being said, we were talking before the podcast about how, there's a parody movie about biopics called Walk Hard. And I actually read an article that's kind of dealt with the same thing. Is that basically every biopic, musical biopic, has the same structure. You get a little bit of the band's history. So at the time that Walk Hard came out, you had Johnny Cash, and the movie named after him,
Walk the Line.
Walk the Line. You had Ray, which came out around the same time, and so. You have these people with, varying degrees of, like, abusive backgrounds or whatever, hard backgrounds, and they turn to music, to save themselves from their situation, and, they're waiting for their break, and then finally they get their big break, and they skyrocket to fame, and they lose themselves in that fame, they go a little crazy. And, if they're in a band, the band breaks up. If they're, like a singles person, they go, like, nuts. They go, as far away from their original sound as possible. And then something, there's usually substance abuse involved.
Guys, I can save you so much time. There's a wonderful Simpsons episode about the B-sharps that just does all of this.
In half an hour.
Less. And look, his appearance on that episode is the best thing George Harrison ever did.
Oh, nice.
Because the Beatles sucked.
I won't disagree.
So the person or people get over their substance abuse issues. The band gets back together, and then there's triumph. Bohemian Rhapsody, which won an Oscar or was nominated for Oscars. It's actually not that great of a movie.
It was nominated for several, a couple of which it didn't deserve, a few of which it did. Again, Rami Malek winning Best Actor for his portrayal of Freddie Mercury.
Absolutely.
Fine.
Yeah.
It being nominated for Best Editing is the most asinine nomination in that category. This is not a joke. Find any isolated 2-minute clip of that movie and count the number of cuts. And if you want to get absolutely blackout drunk, take a shot for each cut. You will be in the hospital with alcohol poisoning after 40 seconds. It is the most. Michael Bay's editing is more coherent at times.
Ouch!
It is awful. It is horribly cut together. And there are times when that style of editing can be used to convey an appropriate mood and appropriate atmosphere. Like, there's a few times when they're recording that they rapidly cut between things to try and it's done for a deliberate artistic purpose. When they're sitting around a table talking about their contract with a new record producer, I don't need 18 cuts in 10 seconds.
I talked a little bit about The Doors. The Doors, The Doors was very stylistically made. There's the direction Oliver Stone took, from what I remember, one could call it artful, others could call it boring, but there was a.
It's Oliver Stone, man. The fact that movie is somehow not the worst thing he's ever made just tells you how far downhill he's gone.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the. So people, have written to me and it's like, hey, why didn't you cover Bohemian Rhapsody? Because of because of this problem. It's what do you say about a movie where the genre is kind of all the same, and it's dependent on the viewer, not necessarily on the content of the movie. Unless it's poorly acted, then that might be a problem. But like I can't think of too many biopics where it was so poorly acted it takes you out of the movie. At least not musical ones. So, but yeah, one of the big criticisms of The Dirt is that it felt like a rushed product. It's a sort of, I mean, right now, you have the big hit that is Bohemian Rhapsody. This year, I think there's a biopic for Aretha Franklin coming out. There's one for Elton John. And you're just going to see the same fucking patterns over and over again. And we're not going to cover them here. Because again, what is there to say about any of these things? But right now they're the big fad in Hollywood. And you want to add anything else to this, or do you want to move on?
No, I think that's probably about. Again, like there's a very, very clear formula to this, and you left out kind of the opening bit for a lot of these movies, which is the subject of the movie right before a big, very famous moment in their career. And so again, since you brought up Walk the Line, that movie opened with Johnny Cash right before he goes out to sing his concert in Folsom Prison.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he just flashes back through his life that leads up to that moment.
Yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody starts right before Live Aid.
Yeah, they all do that. All of them. I think even if I can go in it's not the way back machine, but years ago there was the one that Jamie Foxx won an Oscar for, Ray.
It was Ray, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not sure he deserved that Oscar, but it was a weak year for acting. I'm pretty sure that one does the same thing. Like they all do this, they all follow the same formula. If you're a fan of the subject matter, you will enjoy it more than likely. If you're not, you won't. And the only things of interest in those types of movies are the acting or crazy visual style. And if you don't have if you don't have something like that, if you're not a fan, there's nothing of interest.
All right.
Let me ask a question, though, before
Sure.
we move on. Mark and Winfrey here. Okay. Since we're going to get a bevy of these, all right, what band, if you could choose?
Guns N' Roses.
Okay.
Only because
answer.
Axl Rose is such a bizarre fucking character, and in the post Use Your Illusion years, he was such a whack job. I think it would be interesting to see that on like I don't even need to see like necessarily Guns N' Roses. I want to see a movie that's like focused on Axl Rose, and that takes us from the Guns N' Roses years through the Buckethead solo fucked up 20 years to make Chinese Democracy back to Guns N' Roses again. And I want it to be called To All the People I've Punched Before.
Get the ring.
Maybe the only other one I want to see dramatized would be to take the documentary Some Kind of Monster and turn that into a biopic.
Okay.
That's Korn, right?
No, that was Metallica.
No, that was Metallica.
Yeah, that's the documentary of how Saint Anger, the worst Metallica album ever, got made.
it somehow that album needed documented. All right.
In fairness, if anything goes off the rails that badly, I do want to know what led to it.
Good point.
Are you talking about Saint Anger?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason Newsted left the band, and they went into therapy to deal with the fact that the band fucking basically Lars and who's the guitar player?
Hetfield?
James
You're not talking about
Hetfield.
Hetfield.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically Lars and Hetfield fucking hated each other at the time. Jason Newsted leaves the band because Lars and Hetfield together were both dictators. So he goes to do Voivod, I believe it was, or it's whatever else he was doing at the time. Kirk Hammett went to go ride horses, and and Lars and James Hetfield go into therapy because they hate one another. And then through the therapy sessions, they start working things out. Like Lars ends up making up with what's his face? Hello, me.
Mustaine.
Dave Mustaine, yeah, from Megadeth. And eventually, the therapist believes he's part of the band, so they have to fire him. And through all of this, angst, all of this grist for the mill, out comes Saint Anger, and everyone was like, "Go back to hating each other. Your music was better then."
Goodness.
Well, I think that's largely because James Hetfield said, "You know what, Lars? We'll go ahead and do this one your way."
The other thing about that the movie deals with is the fact that James Hetfield's like a roaring drunk.
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, I remember that.
So I would love to see that dramatized.
Winfrey, do you have any preferences to what you'd like to see?
I mean, I'd like to see an actual faithful telling of Mozart's life, because Amadeus is like the most inaccurate piece of crap ever filmed.
Really?
Okay.
No idea.
Oh, you have no idea how profoundly inaccurate that movie is to the historical truth of Mozart. Horribly inaccurate.
In a year or so, Jesse, and we're going to end up talking about it on TV Party tonight, they're doing a series on Hulu dedicated to the rise of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh my gosh.
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with, baby. Yeah.
Just why?
Because cash rules everything around me, Winfrey.
Cream.
No, not you. I know why you're doing it. I'm wondering why this is getting made at all.
Because the Wu-Tang Clan were a fascinating bunch of people.
No, they weren't.
Okay.
Oh.
No,
Old dirty bastards.
I mean that in all seriousness. They weren't. Like their music had a profound impact on certain segments of society. Fair enough. They're not that interesting.
I don't know. Old dirty bastard, making all that money off of Enter the Wu-Tang and still being on welfare. It's pretty damn funny.
How many fucking band members were there?
Yay,
Like 9?
106.
106. Mark was one at one time.
Yeah, there was the RZA, the Jizza, and the Mizza. I was the Mizza.
The old bald bastard.
I was the old Jewish bastard.
You want to know the profoundly sad thing is you could actually tell me that you featured on one of their albums, and I wouldn't argue. I'd say, oh, that's cool. So what'd you blow the money on?
All right, are we ready now?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Joey Madison of Hollywood News. It's juvenile, indifferently made, garish in the worst way, and makes just about every other biopic look better by comparison.
It's juvenile because have you met any rock stars? That's what they do. Garish, I think it's less garish and more a deliberate style choice, to be quite honest. And again, I gave the director a fair bit of crap, but I do think a lot of that was deliberate.
Amy Zimmerman of The Daily Beast. A tasteless celebration of rock star cliches.
I mean, do you people not understand that cliches come from reality? I mean this in all sincerity. Do you know why there's the cliche of ditzy cheerleaders or rock bands that destroy hotel rooms? Because for at least 20 years, that was the norm.
Exactly.
These do not spring up apropos of nothing. It is brought on by actual reality. Now, again, that doesn't mean all of them, but I mean, what? Again, I have to question: what did you expect about this movie was going to be?
Audra Schroeder of the Daily Dot. The biopic works a little too hard to suggest that they were really just good boys from broken homes who got sucked into the void of music industry excesses. You didn't really watch the movie.
Yeah, at no point did you actually internalize, or even you fell asleep I can probably pinpoint the exact 30-minute segment you napped through.
Mick Mars and Tommy Lee are not the same person.
No, they are not. I mean, and Broken Homes. I mean, we definitely have one, and that's Nikki's. But that's Vince Neil. You don't even see his. I don't think.
No,
you don't even see his family.
And
so
Tommy very clearly comes from a normal normal family.
That had me. Yeah, even though he's wearing his sister's pants, his parents are like, "Hey, good on you, son."
Yep.
They had no fucking problem.
Sinead Brennan of RTE Ireland. It's the definition of a vanity project.
Yeah, fair enough.
Why would they say that?
It's right up there with Fighting with My Family, which was a vanity project for The Rock.
I mean, okay, these people are this band is coming out and telling their story. Okay, you can't get much more vain than that. That's definitely not painted in the greatest strokes of bright blues and pinks here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a
there was a lot of pink. Whoa. There was a lot of pink.
Okay, excuse me. It's not a rosy rainbow-colored story here. It's gritty. It's sad. And it's vanity, whatever. It's still their story, and it's meant to make you understand some of the hard shit that they had to go through, even though they had the best fucking time doing it.
Dan Caffrey of Consequence of Sound. Despite the long wait, the Doit is nothing more than Karaoke Crew.
No, I mean, again, I don't think they actually. I'm pretty sure this was all lip synced. This isn't karaoke in the technical sense, and I don't think it's Karaoke Crew in that this isn't a cover of their lives. This is, again, a largely accurate representation of the stories that they've told themselves. If you want to take issue with the band's accuracy and the accuracy of the book that they wrote, then I mean, fair play. But other than that, I don't think that necessarily is a fair complaint. You're just trying to stretch the comparison between music and the movie.
And now a special feature of this section of the podcast. This is the Get 'em Winfrey moment of the evening. Are you ready?
Hang on, I gotta have a drink. Gotta loosen up the old vocal cords.
Yeah, go ahead and stretch. Get loose. Let me know when you're ready.
All right. Bring it.
Lorraine Ali, Los Angeles Times, top critic. It's as if the film arrived to the streaming service in a bubble, unaware that the culture has moved on and that Netflix is brimming with content written, directed, and starring strong women.
Okay. Would you rather they invented someone out of whole cloth? Because frankly, I think that would be more insulting. I genuinely think it is more disingenuous to go, you know what? This attempted accurate representation of a rock band in the early 80s does not feature a prominent female character. Let's invent someone to pander to audiences. I mean, there's a reason that if you do it, I mean, hey, there's a reason that if you're doing an accurate representation of, say, the military in World War II, not a lot of women. That's not because women are incapable, but if you look at the military if you look at the D-Day, not a lot of women on the boats that are landing on the beaches of Normandy. That just wasn't a thing at the time. Again, if you want to complain, how dare society in 1944 be different from society in 2019? You must lead a miserable life.
Spencer Kornhaber.
Hold on.
Sorry.
I wanna step in here. I know.
Oh shit.
Winfrey done got him, but I'm gonna step up and add one more kick.
Shoot your shot.
Here's the deal. You want to talk about not being progressive enough. You look at the early pictures of this band, and you find out why I, as a young boy, might have been sexually confused when I looked at this when I looked at the pictures of these men dressing as women, and I was like, oh, that chick's hot. No, wait a second. There.
No, that's Vince Neil.
That's Vince Neil. Whoops. Yeah, it was progressive at the time. If you want to talk about a strong female lead, I thought there was a strong female lead when I saw pictures.
Yeah,
of this
his
band
name
at
is
one
Dee
point.
Snider.
So,
Leave Dee alone, man.
oh. All right, continue.
All right. Spencer Kornhaber of The Atlantic, top critic. The danger of
No. You write for The Atlantic, you just suck.
The danger of a document like The Doit is in showing the pig-headedness as not only fun and cool, but also elemental, inexplicable, and unstoppable. Boys will be boys, 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 dudes.
Did you add that?
No.
Did he actually write that?
He wrote. He wrote. Boys will be boys, boys, boys. I added the dude part.
Okay. No, that's like, okay, I knew if he started that, you were compelled by your nature to finish it, so fair enough, but... Okay, moron. Let's start with your crappy publication, which hasn't been relevant in 20 years. The last great piece that The Atlantic did came about the time I entered the world. You're existing on for a publication that is dying to anyone with half a brain. Second, this is not an argument that boys will be boys. First of all, and I'm going to make a real controversial statement here, so everybody brace yourselves. There's some truth to that nugget of there's some truth to that sentiment that boys will be boys, because boys and girls are different. I know. All of you, there's so many of you out there that just spontaneously voided your bowels at the truth of that sentiment. Now, don't get me wrong, it gets horribly misapplied and was used as an excuse to justify a lot of just genuinely terrible things that people have done. That doesn't change the fact that there is an underlying sentiment to, boys will be boys. They tend to run into each other at high velocities just because they can. You ever just taken two boys and just placed them in a room together? They start throwing crap at each other. And not maliciously. Like, they'll do stuff together, and then, you know what would be fun? Whack. The other one goes, hey, that is fun. Whack. Now, again, this is not healthy as you progress through the aging cycle. Teenagers should not be doing this to each other necessarily. But that doesn't mean that there's not, again, some biological differences. And this is not, again, I do not believe this is presented within the negative connotation of boys will be boys, and that means we can't hold them accountable for anything. They do some pretty terrible things in this movie that, because they are deliberately presented through the lens of the band, I mean, they drop a TV on a guy's car at one point for no reason.
I laughed so hard during that scene.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
can you imagine that poor guy filing his insurance claim?
You know what the best part about that was? Doc McGee saying, I worked with a lot of bands who did stuff because they thought that's what rock stars should be doing. These guys did things because they were animals.
Yeah. Like, again, you're attempting to just represent the actions as they happened. This is what they did. Okay, you mentioned, what musical biopic I might potentially be interested in. In all fairness, if you could do Ozzy's,
Oh, yeah.
and do it, do it actual justice, just to watch more critics like this heads explode. Like, Ozzy did what?
Yeah, he needs
How
an
dare
HBO.
they present this?
Ozzy, you can't do Ozzy in a 2-hour movie. Ozzy needs an
It's a
HBO.
miniseries.
Yeah, Ozzy needs an HBO series.
I mean, again, fair enough. I don't care about the medium of it, but again, not all of this is presented as good, but it is presented as what happened. And you know what? If you're not the guy getting something dropped on your car, yeah, it's funny. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not really sorry, but I'm sorry that your worldview is so limited that you can't acknowledge the reality of this. Someone falls down the stairs, and as long as they get up, it's kind of funny. Same type of thing.
I would actually like to see the producers of The Crown take the same structure of that series, but apply it to Ozzy. Just like do 6 seasons, do 6 to 8 seasons of Ozzy's life,
shit.
starting with Black Sabbath, but every 2 years replace the actor, like they're doing with Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, goodness.
Either that, or you just do it for or you do one season that's like that. You just have 4 different actors to play Ozzy throughout his career.
There you go.
Which, I mean, that's what they did with Bob Dylan.
Okay. Rob Harvilla of The Ringer. Anyone watching this film for actual musical content is bound to be disappointed. I don't know why he capitalized musical content.
Neither do I. This is not presented as a musical in the traditional sense of the word. It's Mötley Crüe's music. It just plays over the background. Did you expect a full-on... I mean, again, this isn't Joaquin Phoenix doing his best Johnny Cash impression.
Are they upset because they, didn't get into the whole songwriting process? And that was featured a couple times, but I could understand maybe
this guy's
that
annoyed
argument.
that this guy's annoyed that he's writing movie reviews for The Ringer.
Brian
Because
Teller...
this is a guy who knows that no one's reading his work.
Brian Tallarico of RogerEbert.com, top critic. You could listen to Dr. Feelgood 2 full times during the runtime of The Dirt, and learn just about as much of the band as you do in this R-rated Wikipedia article of a movie.
I'm going to take issue with the fact that Dr. Feelgood as an album is that revelatory about them as individuals.
Well, I don't think that's what he's saying. He's saying, he could have said, the sentence could have read, you could listen to Holmes' Theater of Pain. You could listen to Shout at the Devil. He's saying you could listen to a Mötley Crüe album twice, and you'll learn just as much about the band that way as you would by watching the movie, because the movie is so shallow.
Look, is the movie superficial by and large? Yes. I don't think that necessarily means you could guess at a lot of the crap that they did by listening to some of their albums, sure, but I don't think that's the same thing. That said, calling this movie an R-rated Wikipedia article is both accurate and funny, so kudos for that one.
Okay, I'm going to read these last 2, and then we're going to call it a night, but go ahead, Jesse.
I was just going to say, I came out of this movie learning a lot more than I did going into it. I had no idea that Vince Neil's, number one, had a daughter that passed away. That was, as brief as that was touched on, I had no idea about it, and it was...
Did you know he killed the guy from Hanoi Rocks?
No, I had no idea about that. A lot of this...
That. I didn't know that Tommy Lee was married to Heather Locklear. I know he's been married several times. The only one I could tell you off the top of my head was Pam Anderson.
Yeah. So
I didn't know Nikki Sixx technically died.
None of that shit's on the Dr. Feelgood album. So, fuck off, man.
All right. Eric Mellon of Pitch.com. The authentic, rule-breaking storytelling strategy would have been to portray Mötley Crüe as the children they were, instead of some teenage wish-fulfillment fantasy that retrocons their history and sugarcoats their bad deeds. What was sugarcoated here?
Now, look, if your contention is, why weren't they publicly castigated for being these horrible people? I mean...
I don't know, because this world used to have a sense of humor.
Well, no. There's 2 reasons for that. One of them is, yeah, sure, have a sense of humor about the movie. 2 is, a guy who just perpetrated mail fraud and a hate hoax and wasted millions of taxpayer dollars in the city of Chicago just got off scot-free?
Charges were dropped.
Don't tell me that this not only used to happen, it still happens.
Yes.
Shut up. We have not moved beyond that aspect of celebrity and society.
Exactly.
Shut up.
Exactly. You set a documentary or whatever the hell they're called. Documentarian? How's that? I'll go with that. Librarian, something. Okay. Anyway, you set them down with any rap group.
Metaconia.
Or any Metaconia. Set them down there and just have them watch them go on a tour for about 2 months and document all the shit that goes down. It's still happening today. So, yeah, exactly.
I mean, they touched... Look, I didn't care for the movie. I actually didn't see the movie, but based on the reviews I heard of it, including the one that Mark did, for Straight Outta Compton, I mean, yeah, those guys did terrible things, too.
Yeah.
They fucked a lot of bitches on that van.
It sure would have been nice if there were a strong female character in the story of the rise...
of the band that wrote a strip club anthem called Goyles, Goyles, Goyles.
No, I mean the NWA. Like, okay. No, because really what we needed in the story of Ice Cube.
All right, last one. Nick Rogers of Midwest Film Journal. It's no surprise The Dirt is more hashtag We Crew.
Stop.
Let me finish. No.
No, you don't need to. This guy wrote a hashtag into his article. You have no intelligence. You have no integrity. You have no business actually doing what you're doing. Stop it. Be better.
Hashtag We Crew.
Hashtag We Crew. Then hashtag Me Too. But it sidesteps any...
Okay, no. No. Shut up. You're just desperately trying to get someone to click on your material scrolling through the hashtags on Twitter.
Yep.
Shut up, you hack. How dare you? Look, film criticism is not the most important thing in the world by any stretch of the imagination. You're actively denigrating it. Like, a bunch of people are just bad because they're bad. You're trying to demean your own work. I feel a little bit sorry for your existence. Stop it.
I want to see. Mark hasn't even read the full review. Does he redeem himself somehow, Mark? Because I'm curious.
There is no redemption.
Okay, so Jesse, Nick Rogers of Midwest Film Journal. It's no surprise The Dirt is more hashtag We Crew than hashtag Me Too.
Sorry.
But it sidesteps any controversial exploits that threaten to pop the balloon of fun. For all hang on, I'm not done yet. For all
this guy's not done.
No. For all its faithful depictions of the crew lifestyle, it winds up as the same old situation.
Work your hashtags in there, then work the song reference. What else did we work in there? Has he got another 3 sentences to go?
No, we're done here.
This movie makes me Dr. Feel Bad.
You know what? That's probably the concluding sentence of his review if we actually clicked on it. Don't do it, Mark. Do not give him that click.
Don't do it.
I'm good, thanks.
How is this person employed? Your editors have no integrity. Like, no one is actually... Clearly, no one at your publication bothers to read what you're... Like, you don't actually have an editor. You don't actually have anyone who even remotely considers the content that you're putting out and that it's associated with them and who they are. You are a joke. This has, like... The only way your review actually makes sense to exist in the world is as a comedic satire of bad film review. Congratulations, sir. That's what you are. You are a parody of what you pretend to do for a living.
All right, and our coverage of Mötley Crüe, The Dirt, continues tomorrow on The Metal Hammer of Doom. We'll have
that again.
Nope. We'll have Mr. Toxic Masculinity himself, the punchy pugilist, Pat Mullen, will be on the Metal Hammer of Doom to discuss the Dirt soundtrack, featuring 3 new songs, one of which is a cover of Madonna's Like a Virgin, and a new song called The Dirt, featuring Machine Gun Kelly, who plays Tommy Lee in the movie. So that'll be a lot of fun. You looking forward to that, Jesse?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And next week, here on the Grand Old Damn You Hollywood, we're not done with you yet. We've got Dumbo, which apparently is currently rotten at 49%, according to Rotten Tomatoes. So
who'd have thought a Tim Burton movie that isn't good?
Yeah. So
he's style, not substance, 90% of the time.
That brings us into April. We'll be doing Shazam April 9th, Hellboy April 16th. Contrary to the propaganda that was perpetrated by Jesse and his cohorts while I was away, there is going to be a Pet Sematary review. It's going to be the night that I'm at Whitesnake, which is April 23rd, still Tuesday. It'll be Rob Winfrey, Jason Teasley, and Alexis Haina of Honeysuckle Rose Creations. And then finally, we round out the month of April with the only movie that matters, Hail to the Mouse, Avengers, Endgame, whatever it takes.
Avengers, wait, someone actually might die and it'll stick this time.
Avengers, countdown to Captain America's final doom.
Can I just, in all seriousness, say all the people freaking out that, oh, wait, Shuri died? I mean, A, she's more annoying than endearing. B, no one who died in that movie is staying dead.
Yeah, people... Like, this propaganda that's sort of arisen around the movie, like, well, who died in this? Who fucking cares? I just want to see the story, you know. I want to see how they're going to resolve this. I don't need to know who fucking died in the snap or who didn't die in the snap. I'm going to assume those who did not die in the snap will be somewhat part of the resolution of the movie. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's so overblown. Like, I maintain anyone who dies in Endgame is staying dead. Like, this is when it starts to count. I mean, again, I want to get into this more when I do my upcoming miniseries on this. But I was rooting for Thanos throughout the entirety of Infinity War just because I thought it would be interesting. And I'm glad they did it the way they did. But yeah, anyone who, I mean, oh god, then they had to take you out of the movie by only snapping away characters that it was very clear were not staying dead.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we've announced at least 3 of these people have sequels in the works. I wonder if they're gonna come back.
Oh, we killed him in the last movie. Damn it. Our plans have been destroyed.
How dare the Russo brothers foiled million...
Boy, it's a good thing we bought Fox. Now we have characters to make movies with because we've run out of our own characters because we killed them all.
Boy, we killed Black Panther, and I'm just not sure what we're going to do now. Oh, man.
By the way, that's racist. Anyway, so that's what's going on here in the Metal Hammer of Doom. Here in the Rattleton Broadcasting Network. As for what's going on this week, Monday with source material with Scooby-Doo Apocalypse with the propagandist Jesse Starcher and
propaganda.
Alexis Hana and Jason Teasley. Again tomorrow we do more Mötley Crüe here, and then Thursday, Bloody Thursday, the return of On Trial for the month of March. We're going to be looking at Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed. And then this Saturday is Alexander something Polish versus Dowdow something African. That's boxing on ESPN.
Boy, you call me racist.
And I think, yeah, that's... what do you call it? You, stupid Winfrey. You've got a fight going on too. You've got Barboza versus Gaethje.
Oh yes,
glorious violence.
Oh, you have no idea. These two are gonna kill each other. I'm so happy.
Wow, both of these are on ESPN. That's weird.
ESPN too.
Which one?
Sorry, ESPN. It's the UFC on ESPN too. It's their second event on ESPN proper.
The boxing event says it's from 9 to 11 on ESPN, and then your Barboza thing is 7 to 9. Okay.
Yeah, the boxing is going to come after this. Man,
yes,
they're all just going to have to live with the reality that there's nothing they can do to live up to the insane levels of human carnage that is going to happen when Justin Gaethje and Edson Barboza destroy each other on every level physically possible.
Yes, sir. I understand how time works.
Do you?
I do. Next week, it's Toss Salad Week here on the Rattleton Broadcasting Network. We've got Plastic Man on the Rag, Dumbo, and Children of Bodom Hex. All right, that's all my plugs. Winfrey, plug your stuff, and then I'm going to have Jesse take us out.
All right. This last Sunday, Jeff Harris and I got together, and we had a pretty big episode of the 411 Ground and Pound Radio, the Ground and Pound MMA podcast. I've got to get that right. We reviewed the action from Fight Night 140 blah blah blah. Hang on. 8.
We're all about the details here on the Rattleton Broadcasting Network.
Fight Night 148, also known as UFC on ESPN Plus 6, because they have to take up at least an entire table at your wedding reception. Not a good night of fights. Good main event. Anthony Pettis knocks out Stephen Thompson with a Superman punch in the second round. not a lot beyond that. This was not a very good night of fights. We also previewed the aforementioned UFC on ESPN2 event, where I just get to look. My appetite and appreciation for the damage human beings can do to each other might reach its eternal plateau in Barboza versus Gagey, because oh yes, all of my yes. If this fight falls apart, I might go into just deep depression for 2 weeks.
But if it stays on and you end up having to cover it, are you going to Donald Duck it the whole night? Just watch the whole thing pantsless?
I never wear pants in the house, Mark.
Are you always Donald Ducking it? That's awesome.
I'm not going to confirm or deny that. Actually, you get to figure it out.
Oh boy! Now he's making us think about him without any pants on.
Anyway. No,
I'm just looking at Facebook. I'm not even paying attention.
That's a wise decision. So we preview that card again, which in addition to the great main event is a pretty solid card actually. You have Josh Emmett and Michael Johnson. You have Shayman Moraes and Sadiq Youssef, which is probably going to be a little bit of a banger. It's a good card. We also talk about TJ Dillashaw's failed drug test and the fact that the UFC does not have a bantamweight champion at the moment, and lament the fact that it's probably going to be Marlon Moraes versus Henry Cejudo, and flyweight is just going away, which I've been saying literally since the moment Demetrius Johnson first said, if you're going to make me fight TJ Dillashaw, it's going to be for $1 million. Because as soon as that whole thing broke and like DJ aired some of his grievances, I said what the UFC wants is for Dillashaw to go down, beat Demetrius, say the weight cut sucks, I'm never doing it again, go back up to bantamweight, and they can fold flyweight. And now they're just finally, several years later, getting around to the actual process of it. We also talked about the UFC's business move in the United States, where ESPN Plus, the app, is now the exclusive carrier of pay-per-views for the United States for the UFC.
Huh?
Yeah.
If I want to watch the next UFC pay-per-view, I can watch it on ESPN Plus?
No. You have to buy it through ESPN Plus, and that is the only service you can buy it through.
Really? Because I've been buying the last 2 pay-per-views that I watched through Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's going away.
Oh, fuck me in the goat ass.
Shit.
Yeah, again, starting, I forget exactly when it starts, but in the very near future, if you want to buy a UFC pay-per-view in the United States, you have to be a subscriber to ESPN Plus to then buy the pay-per-view.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we were in St. Augustine, and because I would much rather watch UFC than talk to the people I was with at the time, I actually subscribed to ESPN Plus and then forgot to unsubscribe, so now I'm paying the $5, and I thought for a moment there that I could watch these pay-per-views for the cost of applying for this service, which would have been great. I'd actually start watching the UFC again.
That would have been nice. But no, if you want to buy the pay-per-view, you just have to be a subscriber and then fork over another $60.
Oh, fuck you, UFC. Someday.
Sorry. $54.99.
Someday when you're all alone and the world is... someday, the UFC will follow the WWE model and just make it a part of an over-the-top service that you pay for monthly or 6 months at a time, like I do for the WWE Network. Someday, but today is not that day.
I genuinely think that's the direction Fight Pass might have been headed before they cut a significant portion of the staff, including like 2 of the top people who pushed for Fight Pass to exist to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're just like piggybacking on ESPN's infrastructure, and so we talk about that. This coming Sunday, we will review UFC on ESPN2, and I will bask in the afterglow of glorious Justin Gaethje violence. And we will preview UFC. Wait, do I have a week off?
The 6th, yes.
Holy crap! I have a week off. We won't be previewing anything. Hot damn. 2 weeks. The week after that is UFC 236.
Hey, do you want to be the third man at the table to do coverage for the boxing? Since your fight will be over by then.
Yeah, I can probably swing that.
Okay.
If nothing else comes up. The next event we'll preview will be in 2 weeks. It'll be UFC 236. It's you get an interim title. You get an interim title. I don't joke. The main and co-main are both interim title fights.
Yeah, I'll be at Busch Gardens seeing the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones.
Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier for the interim lightweight title.
In the immortal words of Kurt Cobain, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care.
Yeah, he made that abundantly clear when he swallowed a shotgun.
He was murdered.
No, he wasn't.
Oh, jeez.
Your co-main event is Kelvin Gastelum versus Israel Adesanya for the interim middleweight title.
God bless you.
And again, I'm okay with both of those fights, so we'll preview those again later. Yeah, I suppose I can go ahead and announce this now then. Starting in a couple of weeks.
April 12th.
April 12th, thank you. Friday, April 12th, I'm hosting a Countdown to Endgame special. It'll be a 3-part mini-series of shows where I believe Mark and I, for at least one of them, will be getting together, and we're going to review each of the phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a countdown to, Avengers Endgame. So the first episode will be dealing with Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Thor,
Captain
America, very briefly the Hulk,
and Avengers.
And Avengers, and then the second episode will then conclude with Avengers: Age of Ultron and what a giant missed opportunity that was, and then the third one will naturally enough conclude with Captain Marvel, because that was the most recent. I mean, I might just conclude it with the Infinity War and then just ignore Captain Marvel's existence.
Why do you hate women?
I don't hate women. I hate that movie. Not the same thing. I don't hate the movie. I joke. So that we'll be looking forward to that. It's just going to be a fun little retrospective, how things from different characters look now that we have some more time in with them. Mark and I both have things that on the craft side and on the character side we want to talk about. So it's been a fun little exercise to go back through them. So you can all look forward to that.
Let me give away our conclusion after doing 3 episodes of this. Tony Stark is the real villain of the MCU.
And always has been.
Damn.
Well, and Nick Fury. Let's be fair. Nick Fury gets an honorable mention for, all these world-ending catastrophes, and you know what? Now I'm not going to call the most bullshit, overpowered character in existence.
We got this. It'll be fine.
There's only going to be massive casualties, when instead I could call Captain Marvel. She could fly through this hole in space, breathe in outer space through the magic of her technology, shoot laser beams at the entire invading Chitauri army, and just stop everything in its tracks. But nah, you know what? Not so much. Because I know one day someone even more OP than Carol will show up, and I'll need more cannon fodder.
All right,
so,
Jesse.
As a preview, that's some of the stuff we'll be getting into.
Wow, that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
I plan on it being fun.
It'll be fun. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Go give the Rattlich In Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. You just heard a rundown of them right there. We talk TV, we talk movies, we talk comics, we talk music.
We talk the Doit!
The Doit. D-O-I-T, that's right.
The Doit.
The Doit. So go find your favorite podcast platform, type in RADULICH. Should be able to subscribe right there and pull that stuff down automatically. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Deezer, which I still haven't seen that app.
Deez nuts!
So, but other than that, I'm ready to get out of here. It's been a lot of fun. Not as much debauchery occurred on our podcast as it should have, but I'm satiated. So
listen, I offered to snort cocaine off your ass. You wouldn't let me.
Look, man, he wasn't going to drive that far.
All right, I turn it over to whichever one of you guys want to take us out. Mark.
All right, be well, be safe, big tits.